Hello everyone, this is Delster and welcome to another episode review of Dark Side of the Ring. And in today's episode, it focuses on the life of Brutus Beefcake. I know that Brutus was nicknamed the Barber and had the barber shop segment. In one of those segments, Shawn Michaels throws Marty Jannetty into the barber shop window. Brutus was also inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, but that's pretty much everything that I know of him. I'll probably learn more about Brutus in this episode. Just to give out a trigger warning, this episode talks about Brutus's terrible accident and shows some graphic pictures of his shattered skull and 2 pictures of his bloody wounds. It was a lot for me when they talked about his accident, so if you don't like this type of stuff, you probably don't want to watch this episode. I will call Brutus either Brutus Beefcake or Ed in case there's any confusion. Brutus was born Edward Harrison Leslie, and his birth date is April 21st, 1957. He lived in Tampa, Florida, where he was close neighbors with Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan. While growing up in the neighborhood, Hulk was in a band and played bass while Ed watched. Hogan left the band as he wanted to be a wrestler, so he called Ed if he was interested in being a wrestler too, and Ed said yes. They worked out in their own small gym, and Hulk eventually gets trained by Hiro Matsuda. Hulk then teaches Ed what he learned from Hiro and helps Ed get into the wrestling business. Ed and Hulk started out as a tag team called the Boulder Brothers, as Ed played Hulk's brother even though they were not really related. Some of the audience thought that Ed and Hulk were really brothers, but the 2 men were inseparable as their friendship was strong back in the day. Hulk eventually went to WWF and became a big star over there. Once Ed came in, Linda McMahon thought of a name for Ed, which he would be known as Brutus Beefcakes, because supposedly people thought that Brutus has a nice butt. After the name change, Brutus upgraded his style and learned to wrestle better with the help of Greg Valentine, putting Brutus over in a match. Brutus became tag team partners with Greg, and they got the attention of the ladies. Their matches were very popular when they were a tag team, and they ended up winning the tag team titles. In 1986, Brutus met a woman named Missy who was a huge wrestling fan of his. Missy said that she fell in love with Brutus when she saw him on TV. She thought it was going to be a one-time thing, but Brutus wanted to become Missy's friend, and they did. Brutus eventually went solo as Vince had Brutus take on the Barber gimmick. Brutus was not happy about the idea at first because he wasn't told ahead of time, but the gimmick would later work for him. As Brutus was donning the barber gimmick, he would use scissors to cut the hair of his opponents. At WrestleMania, Brutus was the first person to defeat Mr. Perfect in a televised event. By 1990, Brutus had become one of the biggest stars. Then, on July 4th, Brutus's life would change drastically. On that day, Brutus had a party in Lutz, Florida, where he almost lost his life, as he showed the area of where the accident had happened. Beefcake was close to the water on that day of July 4th, as the guy in charge of the parasailing was growing tired, but a woman named Tracy wanted to go parasailing. The parasailing guy decided to let her do it, and as she was being lifted, she hit Ed so hard in the face as his feet went over his head. Brutus's face begins to fall off, and part of his lower jaw had been shattered, as he said that he could not breathe. B. Brian Blair runs to check on Brutus and sees Brutus's face shattered. Brutus's upper jaw was close to his lower jaw, and his cheekbones were broken as well. Once he was at the hospital, Brutus's blood pressure was over 200. Dr. Mataz Habal reconstructed Brutus's face in 16 hours. They had to cut from the top of Brutus's head to the ears, followed by peeling his entire face down. Dr. Habal uses titanium to reconstruct Brutus's face. For Dr. Habal, operating on people's faces was like constructing a house, as he is a craniofacial surgeon. After the surgery, Brutus was put in a medically induced coma. The doctors called Hulk in order for Brutus to wake up from his coma with a familiar voice, as his parents weren't alive anymore, as they had died years before Brutus had that accident. Hulk leaves his pregnant wife at the time in California in order to be by Brutus's side. Dr. Habal said that if Brutus was hit on the left or the right side of his face, Brutus could have lost his eye vision. Brutus got hit below his eyes and around the nose area, so he was lucky to regain his eye vision, but had to relearn how to talk since his face was peeled. As he and Hulk were walking in the hallway, Brutus's eyeball fell off, and recovering from such a big surgery was going to take a long time for Brutus. The recovery process also involved eating liquid foods for many months, and not everyone who visited Brutus was okay with his appearance. When Sherry Martel visited Brutus, they told her to not get scared, and as soon as she came in, she screamed and the doctors took her out of the room. It didn't seem like Brutus took it badly, but he did say in this episode that it made him laugh really hard. Brutus's doctor tells Brutus that he can't wrestle anymore, so he went on to be an actor for the movies. For a while, Brutus carried Hulk's bags and other items as Hulk trusted Brutus. Vince gives Brutus his own interview segment called The Barber Shop, and it was huge back in the day. Eventually, it didn't have a long run as they had Sid Vicious destroy the barbershop set at WrestleMania 8. Brutus gets taken off television as Hulk was on hiatus due to the steroid trials that were happening in the 90s. They eventually reunited as a tag team in 1993 against Ted DiBiase and Mike Rotunda from the IRS at WrestleMania. Brutus was let go shortly after WrestleMania and went on to do independent wrestling shows until Hulk got into WCW and allowed Brutus to join him. Brian Knobbs from the Nasty Boys said in this episode that Brutus wasn't really great at wrestling as he had Hulk by his side most of the time. Eric Bischoff said that Ed got into WCW because of Hulk in 1994. During his time in WCW, Brutus goes through different names and gimmicks such as Zodiac and Booty Man, for example. Eric thinks that Brutus was in WCW only for the parties as he seemed to take out his frustrations on Brutus and his character, as Brutus could not use Brutus Beefcake since it belonged to WWF. Missy Hyatt said in this episode that it was very rude of Eric to not give Brutus some good storylines as Brutus had stopped Missy from ending her life. She said that after she got fired from WCW, Missy was going to jump out of the window until a call from Brutus stopped her from doing so. Instead of giving up, Brutus changed himself as he grew his hair and got shredded, meaning that he got nice muscles. Brutus was then called the Disciple, as he looked like Hulk and joined the NWO, proving Eric wrong. Unfortunately, his time in NWO didn't last long, and was let go of WCW. Brutus's manager stole lots of money from him, so he had to sell his dream home in order to survive and provide for his daughter, while one of his ex-girlfriends moved to Boston with Brutus's daughter. Afterwards, Brutus went to Boston as well and worked as a toll collector for 12 years in a train station. He hated it as he had to deal with rats running around and the cold temperature from the underground, but he had to work in order to provide for his daughter. One day, Brutus dropped a powdered bag, which he said had BC powder, not cocaine. He said that he didn't take aspirin, but took BC powder because it was easier than aspirin so that he could take care of his pain that he had been dealing with due to putting his body through many years of wrestling. Since he dropped one of the packets, an employee saw it and opened the bag, and the powder popped out of the bag. The employee thought it was anthrax since back in the day there was an anthrax outrage. The entire train station was shut down as the authorities were investigating. Greg thinks that the powder was cocaine, not anthrax. Luckily for Brutus, he did not get arrested, but they sent him to rehab and he sadly lost his train job. Brutus was given pills for his body pain after years of wrestling, but he said that he can't take pills anymore as it would end his life. Brutus returned to wrestling in 2008 with his wife Missy Leslie as they had just tied the knot. Days after he came back to wrestle, Brutus and Hulk had a huge fallout because of his wife Missy. Hulk supposedly did not like Missy, so he cut out Brutus from his life. B. Bryan thinks that Brutus took advantage of Hulk. Missy Leslie says that to this day, Brutus and Hulk do not talk to each other anymore. However, Hulk did induct Brutus in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2019. Missy said that it was the last time Brutus saw Hulk in 2019. Brutus has hope that he and Hulk could be friends again. He and Missy, his wife, look really happy, but maybe Hulk must have felt left out at the time. Interviewers for this episode are Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Missy Hyatt, Eric Bischoff, Brian Knobbs, B. Brian Blair, Missy Leslie, wife of Brutus, Greg Valentine, and Dr. Mataz Habal. craniofacial surgeon. Some other facts that were not in this episode was that Brutus was paid to wrestle 32 shows in 32 days, but had a disruptive attitude and left. He told an interviewer that future wrestlers should not go into the business as wrestling was dying. This was in 2016, and the promotion lost around $5,000 because Brutus walked away. His wife Missy did not make it any easier as she kept calling the promoter day and night. In November 2013, Brutus showed up in the Toronto City Hall with his shears, scissors, and a sandwich. He was trying to be supportive to Mayor at the time, Rob Ford, because of a crack cocaine scandal going on that year. Security took it the wrong way and escorted Brutus out, but he was there because he was trying to promote the sandwiches. Iron Sheik also came the day before asking for an arm wrestling match with the mayor. I give this episode an 8 out of 10 as it was okay, but it would have been a little better to hear Hulk's side of the story. This episode really sent me shivers when they talked about Brutus's accident. Surgeries are never easy, but his face getting torn off, that must have been really painful. I myself have been through some crazy surgeries, but I'm surprised he was able to speak a little after his jaw had just broken during that day. Brutus has been through a lot, but I think he did the best that he could to prove that he wasn't just Hulk's sidekick. I mean, he did at times get jacked in order to fit his character, such as the Barber gimmick and the disciple. It was rude of Eric not having any empathy for Brutus, almost as if he was holding Brutus back. I think Eric was way too focused on the NWO at the time. I could see why Bret Hart said that Eric was not good at managing a business. I do feel bad for Brutus, not only for his scary accident, but for his friendship with Hulk. When you've known someone for many years and have been close friends for so long, that bond seems unbreakable, but I think Missy maybe misunderstood their friendship, which could explain why Hulk doesn't like her. Friendship is valuable, but when there's a person inserting themselves in that friendship, it's hard to keep that bond going. That's pretty much all I have for today, but let me know what you guys think of this episode, review, or episode in general if you've already watched it. And I'll see you in the next video. Comment, like, or subscribe if you want, and take care of yourself and everyone around you, and I'll do the same too. Bye guys.